To not be thinking of someone you care about when you are apart is a kind of gift to them. It intensifies the enjoyment of their presence as fasting enhances the enjoyment of food. To not ruminate on someone is to ever see them with new eyes. It feels different to be seen with new eyes than jaded ones. When you think about somebody too much, those thoughts start to color the perception of the real person. The time spent thinking of them also creates the type of familiarity that breeds contempt. Ideas get ascribed to them that are wholly the product of the mental narrative based on speculation. You will appreciate a person more if you don't think about them too much when you're apart. The Bible gives insight into the nature of human beings, at the very least, in the way they react to circumstances. We see their proclivity to be perverse, violent, superstitious, idolatrous, treacherous, worthless, and tribal. It doesn't say anything good about us, but it is a valid description of how we were and how we are. The Gospels portray disciples who believe Jesus has a place in prophecy, but they are not portrayed in the Gospels as comprehending his real purpose before the crucifixion. For example, Peter had to be rebuked for trying to turn Jesus away from the cross. Jesus taught people to have faith, to be generous, to treat others as you would be treated, and to seek and give mercy. These qualities are the fruit of his spiritual teachings. He pointed to a faith that precludes worry, to be as the wild things that worry not on what the future holds or how they'll be provided for. He taught devotion to the truth. The truth is ever missed in looking away from what is and to what could be for the idol of self. Jesus taught of dying unto that self, of cutting off all that offends in it, which is not the eternal self that's aware of it. To lose identification with all that is to leave it in the care of divine will. In that stillness of surrender appears the truth, and its fruit is in all the ways Christ told us to be. That way comes not from being miserable, but from being free. It comes not from an accumulation of knowledge, but a disinterest in the accumulator of it. In unconscious identification with form and conditioning, knowledge becomes the internal exterior of the conceptual holder of it. To die unto that moves perception from knowledge to experience. There is a new creature born in the death of identification with the old one. This is called sanctification among certain sects, and theosis in others. There is no freedom in being one to have merit. The very act of identifying with either a depraved or meritorious self is mutually exclusive to freedom. The spirit of truth won't appear when attention is given to the schemes of the old man who claims merit. The trap to which Jesus pointed was in being nominal and materialistic in spirituality, as if some accumulation of knowledge or outward acts could yield spiritual transformation or facilitate a transaction with God. An inability to let go is illustrated in Jesus' encounter with the rich young ruler who lacked but one thing, to sell his worldly goods and give them away, He wept because his wealth was too great to abandon. It's better to be wholly ignorant of religion than to be dedicated to a spirituality that seeks heavenly ends through material means. At least the starting point of ignorance leaves undefended the spot where the truth may appear. It's like trying to build a moon rocket from wood and then having to tow and defend the line that it makes journeys there when we're all asleep. The defense of a myth hinders progress. It's all in the veil of imagination that hides the very truth it purports to expose. Jesus criticized those who use religion to aggrandize themselves. Likewise, it's better to know nothing than to pursue material ends through spiritual means. That is black magic. The content that this channel puts forth is like instructions for breaking the internal mechanism of relational thinking. There are consequences for that beyond what thoughts are playing in mind. We are energetic beings, and in energetic awakening, the energy that has heretofore been contained in the shell of conditioning becomes exposed to the awareness that took itself to be that sock puppet of conditioning. The energy can now cling to new information to define it, but the process is being witnessed in a way that is instructive and can't be unseen. To see the disjointed thing try to form a cohesive identity again, it can't be unseen. So it's like trying to get somebody to be afraid of something that's been exposed as harmless generally. The identification with conditioning is broken by the perception of the energy body that occurs in attention's alignment with the moment. What your partner reflects back to you in terms of feedback can shape how you see yourself. That reflection can form your identity. If you base your happiness on that of your partner and they can't be happy, there will be an endless need for novelty. The composite other is what's projected onto a stranger based on their ascribed characteristics. It's a stereotype. Stereotypes are implanted through conditioning. It's wise to question the motives of one who is trying to impress a generalization into your mind. First, consider if it can be corroborated in your personal experience and not just by the testimony of paid actors. Is it true? Is it statistically provable? Have the variables been properly normalized? Or have they not been to intentionally mislead significant chunks of the bell curve? Then consider the consequences of the generalization. What is the spreader trying to accomplish? What is their motive? What is their goal? Generally, these things work towards separation from the other. The negative stereotype justifies a kind of shunning. To shun a group out of existence, you program them to self-shun, to self-exile, and let others fill the vacuum. Stereotypes are weapons. They are guarded as either forbidden or sacred based on the goals of their programmers. Programmed minds are recognized by the content they espouse. Rarely do people consider the source of their programming, the motives of the programmers, and the world that this view leads to in its ascendancy. Consider the end always. Bad outcomes are failures to see all the variables and game out second and third order consequences. Mainstream media is a sales pitch for the world that the powerful few envision. They don't have to show you this world explicitly to get you to create it. They just have to show you things that will make you tend to respond in certain ways based on certain stimuli. They are thwarted in the absence of your attention. Their business is arbitraging eyeballs, and when they can't, they fold. The combined projections about strangers in a society determine the level of trust within it. If people identify with strangers or find their identities to be somewhat adjacent to their own, they trust them a bit more. Trust is an efficiency builder. If I don't trust a new trading partner, I'm going to require them to send a wire before I ship goods. Low trust creates friction in society. People have to be more cautious, and caution has a cost. Low trust facilitates atomization, which makes people melt away like broken ice that's being exposed to more surface area. There is a great sin in cultivating enmity between brothers. The truth is not in one who does it. Animus requires that others be perceived not as the pure awareness to which their forms give rise, but rather the forms themselves. Ignorance allows the belief that arbitrary forms should be held accountable for their provenance and not their actions as individuals. The projection of stereotypes works towards treating people as members of groups as opposed to individuals. The projected stereotype is superimposed over all the qualities of the individual. It is a step in the process of dehumanization. It is projected by media, which conditions the mind, then projects this image onto the strangers who fit the targeted demographic. To discover that one is none of these things is to know that no others are either. There are no differences between what's seeing, only what's seen. And in this is a state that exposes all conditioning to be exogenously sourced. This is to be free.